Welcome to this end of the line video podcast, aka a video. I'm Derek Teal, editor of Pro Food World, and I'm joined by Liz Cuneo, editor of Healthcare Packaging, Matt Reynolds, editor of what are you, editor of Packaging World, and then Sean Reynolds, editor of OEM.
Hey,
And we're
Sean,
just discussing.
brother.
Reynolds, Riley, whatever it takes.
Sorry, sorry, Sean Riley. This again, I should have led off saying I am the most unqualified person to do this, and yet here I am taking one for the team doing it.
I think
So
you're doing excellent.
thank you. And we're here discussing, among other things, besides people's real last names, just the stuff that we've seen this past week. And Liz, you were in New York, as I understand it.
I was at Interfex, which is a global pharma and biotechnology show. That was my first time going, so it was kind of interesting. It's a big show for pharma, but it expands beyond packaging. So it was kind of cool to see some of the things that I don't typically get to see at all of my events.
Very cool.
Such as, I
Right?
mean,
Okay. Thank you for asking. Um, so one thing I saw, which I never really gave much thought, because again, it's a little outside of packaging, but so cold storage solutions for pharmaceutical companies. And really, this again goes into the rise in biologics, medicines that require temperature sensitive facility space. And, facility space in any industry is a struggle. So there was these interesting kind of, I don't want to call them trailers, but that's what they reminded me of, but these modular cold
Mhm.
storage that you could rent for your facility, and you could add as much as you want. You could, change the shape and the layout and all this stuff. And the rep was telling me that it's a rental thing. They can commit to it for as long or as short, just, depending on if it's more of a permanent need or certain times of the year. And some companies are putting them outside, which I thought was interesting. So you're kind of adding that footprint to your facility, or you can bring them inside and put them in parts that maybe weren't as usable before, but now you have that cold storage. I thought that was pretty cool. The some of the sessions talked about AI, as we would, and data analytics and what that looks like in the pharma space. Sustainability, always a kind of touchy and strange topic with pharma. We talk about not being able to use those materials if they've been altered. But there's kind of workarounds now, I guess, of how to kind of add your sustainability into the packaging in a less than straightforward way. So, kind of looking at beyond the materials, where else can we add sustainability? So, some of that was in the shipper, the housing and disassembly, making things easier to take apart for recycling. There was more talk about adding in sustainability in the secondary packaging, since that has no contact with the drug itself. So it's definitely interesting to see that people are looking outside the box. A good quote that I heard was the industry tends to keep what works. That's the pharmaceutical industry. But sometimes it's time for a change, and it really seems like that time is now.
And Matt, while you were at a show recently, you said Anne Marie was, and she saw something that was relevant to what Liz just said about sustainability, right?
yeah, like you said, it's a fraught topic. She was actually in Nashville this week, so she was sending me dispatches. Did send me a few notes that tend to align with what Liz was saying. Right now, the kind of the 800-pound gorilla is California, and specifically their SB 54. According to Anne Marie, it was like baked into like every session. It's creating a lot of confusion and frustration for brands, and it's already influencing different material choices. But there's no rhyme or reason, according to some of the folks that she talked to, like molded fiber egg cartons might not qualify as recyclable, which I
Hmm.
suppose, it seems like I mean, it seems like that would be something that would be the lowest hanging fruit, because even if they weren't recyclable, the slurries that they make these molded fiber cartons, they might be using old, basically newspaper stuff that you really aren't going to get very long fibers in there to be able to hold a good structure. But so it's kind of end of life, but still it's biodegradable material.
Right.
If it ended up in landfill, it's not like it's creating microplastics or anything. So a lot of the materials that have been widely accepted as sustainable are kind of now in question based on what California is doing. And that only reflects the fact that there is no national alignment because, California's sort of wagging the dog, but every state's doing it differently. So brands are having to design for multiple regulatory realities, and one of them actually I can't name him or his company. I was just talking to him this morning about what we call minimum content laws. So that's the requirement by states like New Jersey. New Jersey's the one who's kind of spearheaded this to for brands to use packaging that has a minimum amount of recycled content so as to sort of spark the circular system. You have to use the material that's coming through the system such so you create a market for it. But the problem is the FDA on the federal level is very iffy about food contact. So, whether yogurt cups or whatever packaging, cereal liners, whatever might be actually touching the food, if that's mechanically recycled. So you could be in a situation where you're using recycled material to be in compliance with New Jersey, but run afoul of FDA or vice versa. So a lot
Hmm.
of confusion with what's going on and the patchwork nature of the laws. Like I said, California is big enough to create its own gravity, but you've got all these disparate different laws, and it's really a gauntlet for brands who sell in all these states to run. So that was the word on the street from SBC and also from a few other brand owners I spoke to today. That's kind of that 800-pound gorilla of California and kind of the specter of these laws coming to reality in a theater near you on January 1. So,
Hmm.
And you bring up something that I hadn't really thought of until you mentioned it, and that is with FD&C certified colors, aka artificial colorings. That there is a
yeah, dyes
patchwork.
and such.
Yeah,
Yeah.
exactly. Yeah, it's a patchwork of state laws that are saying that it must use natural, or you have to make this switch, or it's highly recommended by the federal government to make this switch to a naturally derived dye. But again, it's still an artificial dye, and it's required that they have to say that it's an artificial color. And there's been confusion as to, well, if it's still an artificially added color, does that, what do we have to do in our packaging about that?
Mhm.
And the FDA has said that, well, we're just kind of going to ignore that. We're not going to enforce it if you use this dye, uh, like beetroot red instead of red. I'm blanking on the number. I think it's red 40.
40.
Um, that we're not going to enforce it if you use that instead. But what's getting thrown in the way again are those state regulations, each state coming up with their own set of regulations, and whether or not, and then so that is a real issue for producers because, you know, do I have to come up with separate packaging for a different area? What am I required to do? What am I not required to do? And it's very, I think of it very much like what happened with cannabis and different cannabis laws based on state. Like it's very confusing,
Yeah.
and without it just as much as people don't necessarily like it to have one set federal rule, it does sort of reinforce why that is needed because it just clarifies the situation for everybody.
Yeah.
Even if you don't like it, at least you know where you stand and what you are and aren't supposed to do. But
Yeah.
yeah,
The
it's
term that we hear over and over again is harmonization, and whether we're
mm,
going to get
yeah,
to a harmonization. It's, this is, we always lament the fact that Europe seems to be so much further ahead of us in terms of some of circularity in general, recycling. But they have a mechanism by which to get all the EU members to fall into line under PPWR. So we don't really have that I mean, we do. We have the federal government. It's just not being implemented when we're doing this state, like you said, state by state patchwork of differing and sometimes competing. Like in the New Jersey example, they did New Jersey. The minimum content law has been in effect for more than a year now. I think it's 2024 for non-food contact. So like the cereal carton, has to use some percentage of recycled material. But what they're worried about now is the FDA's, whether or not they're going to give what they call LONOs or LNOs or letters of no objection to using mechanically recycled material and these kinds of things. So again, you're in that state or that situation where do you follow the FDA or do you follow New Jersey? And I think there's going to be a lot of similar examples of that. It sounds like you, in both of your fields and industries, you're experiencing the same thing.
Yeah. And talking about federal regulations and federal policy, Sean, what's going on in that world of especially with tariffs and
Yes. It's interesting that I don't know what it says about us, but I thought the exact same thing when Matt was talking, that it reminded me of the states with cannabis, having the
You're
different
always thinking about
regulations.
cannabis, Sean.
I,
There's a Grateful
I
Dead
was gonna
poster over
chime
your
in.
shoulder.
Yeah, and I left that up to you to handle, Derek. So tariffs, for most for people that weren't paying attention, or if they were paying attention, the Supreme Court basically shot them down a couple months ago. I think it was back in February. Um, they're not gone. They just have repositioned them in a different way. But the bigger news coming out of that was all of that money that came in, and we're talking, I think it was 175 billion paid by US importers, and 55 billion of that was from small businesses. Um, that all has to be accounted for, and a lot of that would be, via refunds. So on the 20th, which I guess was Monday now, it opened up where you can start asking for these EPA tax, EPA, IEEPA tariff refunds, and there's a whole process to go through. And PMMI has set up this great, FAQ for people that want to use. We'll put it up on the screen so people can see that. It'd be helpful. It's for everybody, whether you're, a CPG, a machinery maker, everyone that had to pay tariffs for that. This would be helpful for them to kind of walk them through the process of getting some of their money back. So I guess that's pseudo good news for in tariff talk.
Yeah, well, where's my portal for the pass along costs for the consumer?
Yeah, that
You know?
that I can't help you with.
All
I
right.
saw something similar to that, not related to food or packaging, but that Nintendo users are suing Nintendo because they say that their prices went up and I bought a unit that I should get a piece of that back because you raised your prices. And
Interesting.
Yeah. I read something about, well, there's a lot of little things maybe that we paid the price for, right, over the last couple months or whatever. But then, like, I've heard that we're not getting any kind of refund. But these companies should lower their prices going forward. But then it's like, but will they be if we've shown that we're willing to
They're
pay
willing
for
to
the
pay
higher
it.
price? It's like, I doubt that. Nintendo's like an obvious thing. Maybe we can check that. We can follow that story, Derek. But like food prices, I don't know if we're going to see any kind of relief if those went up, or importing wine and such. So
I haven't been keeping receipts down to like the donut I bought level, so unfortunately,
no.
I don't have a any expense report to put into the
To
government.
submit.
yeah. Well, we haven't gotten anything back from things like shrinkflation, so I guess we shouldn't really expect anything back
No.
from
It
tariffs.
goes one
When
direction. I mean, once any company is able to command a price, it very rarely goes the other way.
Exactly.
It's inelastic in that sense.
If we keep our expectations low, maybe we won't be disappointed.
there you go.
So words to live by, I think, Liz.
Keep your expectations low.
That's what my wife does. Um, on that very optimistic note, thanks to everybody for joining us at this end of the line video, and hope to see you all next week.